Hi everyone, my name is Olajide. I'm a startup solutions architect working with Amazon Web Services. In this video, we'll be leveraging Amazon Pinpoint Analytics to improve applications performance, user interaction, and experience. In this video, we'll be covering a series of topics, more or less like the agenda of this video. So the first aspect would be I'll give you a brief intro to AWS Amplifi. I would try to explain the benefits of pinpoint analytics and also give you an understanding of pinpoint analytics. I'll explain components that make up pinpoint analytics. I would also cover ways of streaming app events to Kinesis and also would touch on ways to analyze these events um, in Kinesis that are sent to your target destination um, using SQL queries from the Antenna console. And finally, we'll be visualizing these key app events that are via QuickSight. So, brief intro to AWS Amplify. AWS Amplify provides libraries for your web, Android, and iOS apps to connect to new and existing AWS resources in just a few lines of code. Our focus on this video won't really be on AWS Amplify, but more on the pinpoint analytics. Now, using the analytics that Amazon Pinpoint provides, you can gain insight into your user base by viewing trends related to user engagement, campaign outreach, revenue, and more. Now, as users interact with your project, Amazon Pinpoint collects and stores analytics data for these interactions. You can view that data to learn about areas such as your users' level of engagement, purchasing activity, demographics. For example, maybe you have a mobile application and you can view charts and metrics that show how many users open your app each and every day, when users open your app, and the revenues that generated by your app. Now, before we dive deeper into the analytics component and also trying to understand the features, the feature sets of Amazon Pinpoint, let's try to understand how we can integrate Pinpoint Analytics into an application via the AWS Amplify libraries. As you can see on the console, my Pinpoint application is in the US West 2 region, and I already have an app. This is more of like my test app for streaming events and also triggering events via the Pinpoint libraries provided by AWS Amplify, or analytics libraries provided by Pinpoint Amplify to um, to the Pinpoint console, and then eventually to Amazon Kinesis. I'll be talking about that as time goes on. So, as you can see, um, I've done this integration already. I didn't want to go take you through that particular step. But at the end of this video, I'll be showing you some links on how you can go about this whole process of creating your application on Pinpoint. Is very straightforward, and also integrating your application with the Pinpoint Analytics, which is leveraging AWS Amplify libraries. So in this particular case, my application has a project ID, and this is a project name. So what I can do in this particular situation is, for those of you who haven't yet integrated analytics into your application component, you just need to go to settings after creating your application or your project, and you go to mobile application analytics. And then you follow these steps to set up or to integrate AWS SDKs into your mobile application. In this case, I was able to successfully integrate AWS Amplify libraries for mobile analytics, for Pinpoint Analytics, I mean, into my existing application. As you can see, this particular application leverages Pinpoint Pinpoint Analytics libraries via AWS Amplify. Now we noticed that this is my application, and these are several of the events that have been sent to um, these are my application events and also certain metrics related to my application that have been sent to the Pinpoint console. The SDK or the Amplify libraries does this automatically for you. You just need to plug in into the SDK and the libraries, and your events from your app and app related metrics will be accessible on the Pinpoint console. Now, there are some key analytics components on Pinpoint Analytics that we'll be touching on, and some of them include funnels, and we'll also talk on event-driven campaigns, analytics graphs, metric, KPIs, key performance indicators. These are very important components that help us improve application performance, drive user interactions, experience, and web app engagement. Now, the focus in terms of metrics in this particular case would be on the application side of things, because pinpoints can be used for a range um, of channels. And when I mean channels, you have the mobile side, which is the push notifications channel, you have the SMS channel, and you also have the email channel. But in this particular case, we are streaming app events, we are sending app events from our application to Pinpoint. So we will just focus on the app related metrics. Now, the first area I want to cover is the various graph metrics that you can leverage to improve user engagement, monitor your application, and also improve application performance. Now, for the analytics overview, you have on the top left hand side, you can always decide to check certain metrics based on the time frame. So you can decide to say, okay, fine, I want to check maybe daily active endpoints or monthly active endpoints, or even sessions that are related to my app from maybe the 1st of March to the 30th of March. That's something you can always check out. But in this particular case, I'll just be focusing on the 1st of because this integration was done in just a few weeks ago. So I'll be focusing on the 1st of April to the 29th of April. Yeah, so it's about 29 days in this particular case. So if we drill down to some of the app analytics metrics, for example, the daily active endpoints. So the daily active endpoints chart, they show the number of endpoints that open your app at least once during a 24-hour period for each day in the selected time period. Now, the same can be said about other metrics in this particular section of the console. So by clicking information, you get context as to what metrics is being displayed, the purpose of this metrics being displayed, and how you can leverage these metrics to improve user experience and user engagement. Now, the usage metric is also very important for in order to understand how your users interact with your application. Now, there's something we call filters in this particular in the usage metrics. The filters are very important in the sense that you can decide to use certain parameters to I would say, to decide on what is being displayed by your the graph metrics. So for example, under filters, you can endpoint attributes. I can decide to select platform, and my endpoint attribute value in this particular case is Android. So I can decide to view charts for just Android devices. So maybe you designed your application for Android and both iOS devices. You can select maybe a platform here. For iOS, option should also be given in this particular case. And then you can decide to um, view app metrics for that particular application. Now, for the usage section of the Pinpoint console, it's very, very important to also it's a very powerful component of the analytics graph metrics, in the sense that you are not just seeing graphical displays, but you can decide to filter on what you want to be displayed by or what you want to see in your usage section of the Pinpoint console. So I can decide to say, okay, fine, my endpoint attribute, select that as platform, and not just the platform alone. You also have standard attributes and you have custom attributes. So the standard attributes are more or less app generated events, like standard events that are published or sent to Pinpoint that you can leverage. Now, custom attributes are those attributes that you can they are built into your application by you. I will say developer built, and you can say, okay, fine, I want to create a custom attribute on to capture certain events, and then push those events to the usage section or whichever component of the Pinpoint console. So they are standard attributes and they are custom attributes. In this case, we have a variety of we have two attributes. You can see I created about I created some custom attributes, and I also the standard attributes would always be there in this particular situation. So for your standard attributes, you have platform. I select that, and you have endpoint attribute as Android. So I decide to view the chart. I get um, a breakdown related to the platform, which is Android in this particular case. And the console, you can also download a CSV file that shows the breakdown of the user metrics generated on the Pinpoint console, and you can use that to perform whichever analysis you have, or or extract whatever you need, or certain values you want to iterate on your end. Now you also have the session metrics, which I talked about, and you also have the session heat map, which I also which also shows the days and times when endpoints opened your application. Now you also have authentication metrics. Now authentication metrics are more of users signing in into your apps, and also users sign ups into your apps. You also have authentication failures, and the authentication failures can be very, very important in understanding the number of times the users attempted to sign in but were unable to do so for each day in the selected time period. You can use this to improve your app performance. Look into the authentication components of your application, make changes to it to improve, to reduce the number of authentication failures experienced by certain users. Now we go to revenue. And with the revenue, it's more or less, you can also have filters for revenue. You can have maybe custom metric setup that publishes certain revenue related information as seen in your application to the Pinpoint console. And with revenue, you can determine the revenue in USD that was reported by your application for each day in the selected time period. You can also see information about paying users, and the paying users chart shows the number of unique users who made at least one purchase for each day in the selected time window. Now you also have the events metric. And events metrics gives you setting information such as endpoint counts and endpoint event count, and also events per session. For example, for the endpoint count, it displays the number of endpoints that reported the selected events for each day in the selected time period. So you can always use this um, metric and for analysis on your end, and to get more context as to the number of endpoints that reported selected events for each day in the selected time period. Now, there's something I just want to show you with filters for events. I can decide to say, okay, fine, maybe I select a particular event. The particular event can be create event. Event attributes in this case can be, let's say, username, event attribute value, Olajide, and I click on view charts. So this will drill down to created events, which event attribute values specifically related to the username Olajide in this particular case. You get more context regarding that. Now you also have the demographic chart, which gives you demographic related information as well, the platforms, app versions, device model, and the device make, and also the user location. Now, before I go into campaigns, I just want to quickly explain funnels. Now, you can use Pinpoint to analyze funnels, which are charts that shows how many users complete each of a series of steps. Now, for example, the series of steps in a funnel can be maybe a conversion process that results in a purchase. For example, maybe in a shopping cart or some other intended user behavior. Now, the purpose of funnels is intended to drive user interaction, experience, and engagement. Now, your app can report the following type of events. Now, standard events, which includes events that automatically report when an app session starts or stops. The names of event types for standard events are denoted with an underscore prefix. So you have more similar to standard the standard attributes I was talking about and custom attributes. You also have custom events. These are defined by you to monitor activities that are specific to your application and not the ones provided by AWS Pinpoint. So just see if these two types of events, that one, the ones we provide, the general events we provide to you, and the ones you specifically want to create yourself, which is called custom events. Now we can decide to create a funnel in this case. So I can decide to give it a funnel name, maybe test funnel. And the series name in this particular case can be maybe receive, for example. So, okay, let me just use sign in for this particular case and select auth sign in. We see that the series is labeled. We create another series and name it sign up, or maybe let's leave this as sign up and then sign in. So now this gives you context of users that, so it can be more of like a more of like a follow through, in the sense that you get information about certain users that just signed up into your app and how those users move to the next stage of your app. Did they eventually sign in into your app? This is not really a perfect example, but a perfect example can be, for example, maybe you sent update related information to certain update notifications to users leveraging your application, for example. Now, with funnels, you can decide to see people that receive this notification. Let's say X number of people received this notification. Now, the people that decide to act on this number of this particular notification, you get to see that information in an accompanying line just like this. So maybe the first line in our case, which is sign up, can be more or less people receiving notifications. The next stage can be people opening or acting on those particular notifications. The next stage can be maybe people that decide to complete the process of installing that update. And maybe you also have information about people that decided to uninstall your app, maybe after receiving that particular update. So it's more or less, you also get percentage wise information on the various stages, the various phases, users who completed each step in the process of updating your app, what they actually go through. Now, by comparing these values in the various columns, you can determine the drop-off rate between these steps. So that's one of the powerful components of funnels in this particular case. Now, campaigns is a very powerful section of Pinpoint, but we won't really be going deep into it. But it's a very important metric you can always use um, to improve user engagement, application performance. Now, a campaign is a messaging initiative that engages a specific audience. A campaign sends tailored messages according to a schedule that you define. So you can use the console to create a campaign that sends messages through any single channel that's supported by Amazon Pinpoint. Now, there's also a component under campaigns. We call it event-driven campaign. I won't really go into it right now, but with event-driven campaign, you create a campaign, you send a campaign based on a particular user event. So, for example, maybe in your particular application, if a user clicks on a particular button or maybe navigates to a particular or does carries out the particular action in your particular application and you want to report on that particular application and at the same time reporting on that particular activity, I mean, you also want to trigger a notification to those users that have maybe clicked on the button or completed a particular activity in your application. We call it event driven campaigns. It's something you can leverage. Now, another section of Pinpoint, which is not usually Pinpoint Analytics, which is not usually in the Pinpoint console, is the key performance indicators. In the future, I'll be diving deeper into this, but with the key performance indicators, you can use the Pinpoint Analytics API to query analytics data for a subset of standard metrics that provide insight into trends related to user engagement, campaign outreach, and more. Now, these metrics also referred to as key performance indicators, such as KPIs. They are measurable values that can help you monitor and assess the performance of your project, campaigns, and journeys. Now, if you use the APIs to query analytics data, you can analyze the data by using the reporting tool of your choice without having to sign in to the Amazon Pinpoint console or analyze raw event data from sources such as AWSkinesis stream. For example, you can build a custom dashboard that displays weekly campaign results or provides in-depth analytics about delivering rates for your campaigns. So this is just the Amazon documentation that talks about using KPIs and some of the KPIs, some of the standard KPIs related to application metrics are this. So for example, you can get successful delivery rate for all campaigns that are associated with a project, the percentage of messages that were delivered to that particular recipient. So it will give you information about that particular value, and you can act on this particular value going forward. Now, how do we integrate Amazon Pinpoint to Amazon Kinesis for advanced analytics? Now, with Amazon Pinpoint, you can stream engagement and application usage data, known as event data, to supported AWS services that provide more options for analysis and storage. Now, it's very important because you obviously you also want to do more with the data that's coming from your application and not just being displayed on the dashboard, the Pinpoint console, as we see. Now, you also want to be able to perform more advanced query this particular data, visualize certain components of this particular data, compare this data against certain other information, or certain data, see ways in which you can improve the user experience and improve user engagement with your particular application. And one of the important AWS services for this is AWS Kinesis. So we'll be leveraging AWS Kinesis data stream and AWSkinesisFire for this. Now, in order to do this, we've gotten our application. Application streams data. So in order for me to send app events, I just need to click on some of this particular events on my application. Automatically, the SDK gets this application events and sends it to the Pinpoint console via the SDK or the AWS libraries provided. But now it stays in the Pinpoint console. But now we want to ensure that we are able to also perform advanced analytics on this particular event. What do we do in this particular case? We go to event stream, which is just under settings section. We see that the event stream to Amazon Kinesis is currently disabled. Now we need to enable this, and one of the steps in enabling this is clicking on the edit button and clicking on this button called stream to Amazon Kinesis. Now when we click on this button, one of the things you need to do is we need to choose a stream type. Now you can decide to send events to an Amazon Kinesis data stream, or you can decide to send events to Amazon Kinesis data Firehouse. In my case, I first of all sent an event to Amazon Kinesis data stream, which now served as a source for Amazon Kinesis data Firehouse, which then add a target such as an S3 bucket. It can also have a target such you can also send the event from akinesisFire to Redshift, Elasticsearch, or even Splunk in this particular case. So the order of things is more like Amazon Kinesis data stream. The next stage is Amazon Kinesis data Firehouse. The next stage is an S3 bucket. You can decide to, like I said, use Redshift, Elasticsearch, or even Splunk in this particular case. Now, in my case, I already have an Amazon Kinesis data stream, which I created, which I select here. But I'll just show you how to go on about creating Kinesis, a Kinesis data stream for this particular activity. So we open a new tab and we go to data streams. We go to create data streams. We just need to, we give our stream a name, maybe test stream. And we enter a value called 1 and we click on create data stream. In this particular case, I already have a stream. Like I said, I won't be, there's no need to create a data stream. Now, the next stage also is to create a Firehouse, a akinesisFire delivery stream. As you can see, I have a delivery stream called Pinpoint Delivery Stream, which is the name. It's currently active. The source is a data stream, like I explained earlier, and the destination is an S3 bucket. Now, this destination you can decide to be flexible in this particular case. It doesn't need to be an S3 bucket. It can also be a Redshift data warehouse, which you can query, and you can also be an Elasticsearch search domain, or even third-party tool called Splunk. So in order to create this delivery stream, we click on, mine is already existing, but I'll just show you the process of doing that. We give our delivery stream test, and then we, as a source, we click on Kinesis data stream. We select this, mine, which I created earlier. You need to create a data stream in this case. I'm assuming that you've created that already. And we click on next, transform. Now, The next step is transform source records with AWS Lambda. We don't need that. It's currently disabled. Convert record format is currently disabled. This is more or less more of like the transformation that you can perform some transformation in between the Kinesis data stream and also AkinesisFire host before the event or the app related data arrives in your destination. You click next, and as you can see the various destinations which I touched on. In my case, I selected Amazon S3. For this demo, we'll be using Amazon S3. You choose your S3 buckets which you create. You can decide to create an S3 bucket of your choice, and you create that. You can also decide to click on this to create a new S3 bucket, and you click on next, and you configure the required settings. So in my case, just for the purpose of this video, let's just choose any bucket. Let's just choose this bucket. We click next. We leave this as default. We don't need to touch anything in this particular case. And we can decide to, in your case, you need to create or update IAM role. Or you can decide to choose an existing role in this particular case. Then you click next, and then you review those changes, and then click create delivery stream. Now, we have our data stream created already, and we have our Kinesis data firehouse delivery stream created. Now we go back to the Pinpoint console, and we select this, which we've selected already. We choose our data stream, and then we use an existing role. In my case, I already created a role. In your case, you just need to automatically create a role. So you'll be clicking on this particular button. Now the role I created was this. So in your case, like I said, you'd click on automatically create a role. Now I decide to save this. Now from disabled, this section changes to enabled. And that's how we enable streaming, event streaming to Amazon Kinesis data stream via Amazon Pinpoint. So from your application, you just need to perform certain actions. Navigate, click on certain buttons, generate events, perform certain activities, and events are automatically streamed to Kinesis. Now remember, the flow of events. My application, I perform certain actions on my application to generate app events. The Pinpoint SDK automatically moves this event, sends it to Pinpoint, then Pinpoint streams this event to Kinesis via the SDK. But now, Kinesis data stream is the first service that takes on this particular app event. Now, this app events are then later streamed to Kinesis files. Kinesis files now eventually delivers this event to an S3 bucket, which I created while creating my delivery stream. Now, it's very important you understand that it takes about 5 minutes, 5 to 6 minutes for your S3 buckets to be populated by this event. So you just need to be patient, just wait a bit, give it a bit of time for the events to be populated in your S3 bucket. I just want to show you how the app events look like. So the app events would be what is being streamed is a JSON object that would contain this following data, like event type, arrival timestamp, application ID, cognitor identity pool ID. This is just like a sample from the AWS documentation. You also have device, code, country, language. These are the events that you can leverage from the various users of your application to perform advanced analytics. Now we go back to the Pinpoint console, and then we check our S3 bucket. Because I've set this up already, I'll be showing you an example of events that are streamed to the Pinpoint console. Sorry, to the S3 bucket, I mean. Now, this is an example of the S3 bucket that serves as targets for my akinesisFire host. As you can see, Pinpoint Kinesis video recording bucket. And then you see this is the bucket. The first thing you see is the year, which is 2021. Then you see the month, which is the 4th of April. Then you see the various days. In our case, the latest would be 29th. And then you see hours. So this can be 10 a.m. in the morning. This is also 12 p.m. in the afternoon. And you click on that and you see your delivery stream. So when you click on this, you get to see certain events, the events that are generated by your application, but in JSON format. So they will look like this, something like this, as you can see in this structure. So you can decide to go to the particular, click on it and decide to go to Object Actions and download to view the contents of that particular event. Now, this event was streamed because of the interactions you performed on your application. Now, in order to once these events arrive in your S3 bucket, we also want to perform, like I said, some analytics on this particular event. And it's very important that we leverage certain AWS services to do this. I'll be leveraging Amazon Antenna and AWS Glue for this particular activity. So with Antenna, Amazon Antenna is an interactive query service that makes it easy to analyze data in Amazon S3 using standard SQL. Antenna is serverless, so there's no infrastructure to manage and you pay only for the queries that you run. So basically for my S3 bucket, the contents of my S3 bucket, I'll be running SQL queries against that particular content. Now, Glue is a serverless data integration service that makes it easy to discover, prepare, and combine data for analytics, machine learning, and application development. You would also understand my use of Glue in this particular case. Now, let's go to the Antenna console. And let's see how we can set up Antenna for this particular case. It's very important that I won't be going into that in this particular demo, but it's expected that beforehand you've created a working group, which is this, and you've also created a database, as you can see, which is sample DB. So there's a documentation which I'll share with you at the end of this video, which you can use to reference in creating a working group and also setting up a sample database in Antenna. Now, the first thing you need to do is you go to Settings in the top right hand side of the Antenna console, and then you specify the query results location, meaning that every single query you run, the output would need to be dumped in an S3 bucket. So we specify the S3 part of our bucket in this particular format. So this would be my bucket name. So if you have an existing bucket, you can always use this. Maybe you have a bucket lying around that you don't really use. You can always put that there. In my case, I created a bucket called Antenna Bucket Query Result and put this here, and I just clicked on Save. That's all. So that's the first thing you need to do. Now, the second thing you also need to do is to connect to a data source. Now, we've set up our working group, we've set up our database in Antenna, we've also configured certain section in Antenna to send the output of our query results to that particular reference S3 bucket. Now we want to link Antenna to the S3 bucket in itself. So what do we do in this particular case? We click on Connect Data Source. Now, you query data in S3, which is this. You choose a metadata catalog, AWS Glue data catalog. This is very, very important. Like I said, it will store related the schemas of our tables that we can run queries against from Antenna. So that's why I said we'll be leveraging AWS Glue data catalog in this particular case. Now, it's very important that when you run this query with Antenna, take note that you pay for the queries you run. So take note of the cost implications. So I click on next, and this stays as default, and I click on connect to AWS Glue. Now we need to create a crawler because this crawler would be responsible for crawling our data sets, setting up tables, and setting up related schemas for our data sets in our S3 bucket. Now you can set this up manually by just adding tables via Antenna. You can go to Antenna, you go to this, and then you can decide to create your table using this button. Now I can decide to create my table using this button, but now I can decide to from S3 bucket data. So using creating the table from S3 bucket data allows you to um, input the table definitions manually. But in my case, I'm just I'm I'm just lazy, just for jokes. But in my case, I'm just using the glue crawler to help me with this particular step. Yes. So we go back to AWS Glue. We set up our crawler name, demo advanced crawler, and we click next. We leave this as default. We click next. Now we specify our S3 path. Our S3 path in my case would be the name of my bucket. Name of my bucket is this. And I put this forward slash is very, very important. So every single thing in my bucket, remember the S3 bucket is separated by dates, but it doesn't matter. Glow would crawl that um, for you. So you just need to put this. So the content of my bucket gets crawled. It's mind you, the format of data coming into my S3 bucket, despite the fact that they are split by different times and dates, is always the same. So the format would always be in this structure. It's just that the values would change, but the format would always be like this. So we click next, add another data source. No, we click next. Now you create an IAM role. In your case, you just type in a value here. In my case, I already have an existing role which I'll be using. So in your case, you just need to create one, and that's for this step. Now we click next. The frequency would be run on demand. You can decide to run hourly, daily, choose days, weekly, monthly, and you click next. Now you select a database. In our case, the database I created was SampleDB. In your case, you need to do that. I specifically mentioned that this step is required before you start running queries from Antenna. Now, configuration options is very, very important. You click on update all new and existing partitions with metadata from the table. And then you click next and you review the changes you've implemented and finish. Now, we see that this is the table we just created, demo advanced crawler. And the next step is to run this crawler. So it says crawler is now running. So you see this, the status starting. Usually takes about, I think it takes about 3 to 4 minutes to finish the whole crawling process and generate a table in Antenna. I would be skipping this part of the video. And just so you know, but you need to be patient. This process takes about 3 to 4 or 5 minutes, yeah, max. Okay, as you can see, the status says stopping, tables added, 1. Now the status needs to get to the point of ready, and then we can start running queries against the tables that have been created for us. It takes some time also at this point. It takes about a minute or two. You can see it says crawler completed and made the following changes. 1 tables created, 0 tables updated. Now we go back to the Antenna console. We click on Antenna. Now we can see we are presented with this table called Pinpoint Kinesis Video Recording Bucket Partitioned. Now let's just run a query, a sample query to see the output. The first thing is we right click on these 3 dots and we click on Preview Table. As you can see, the data from my application is being loaded here for me. Remember this, the output of this query is stored in an S3 bucket. Yeah. So as you can see, what I did was just a simple select from sample database and then the name of my table, which a limit of 10. You can decide to increase this, doesn't matter. But you can see columns of event type, event timestamp, event versions, the application related information in JSON format. And we also have clients, the device, the sessions, and then the attributes related information. Now you can also decide to run other queries in this particular case. So you can just run a sample query. Let's say we just want to select, maybe select certain information. So we can do select application ID and client ID. And so our table name in this case would be this. And then we run that. So you can see we get 2 columns with client ID and the application ID. Cool. So in my case, what I want to do is I want to create a new table because it looks as if the data from this, the results, um, seems to be, you can see here that we have JSON, nested JSON. So I want to have a table whereby I want to just filter specific information and not just have nested JSON. So I'll run a command like this. So this is the query I'll be running against my table. My table in this case would be this. And then I run query. Okay, now I get this particular output as you can see. So as you can see from the results, I no longer have nested JSON and session ID, endpoint status, and respective information I need in this particular case is provided to me. Yeah. Yeah, so another important component is to visualize this data. And the reason why I selected some columns or some information from the previous query is to create a new table and then export this table to a business intelligence tool. In this particular case, we'll be using QuickSight, which would be our business intelligence tool. So I can decide to create table from query by clicking on the create button, create table from query, test table pinpoint, And I can just leave the output data format as paquet and click next in this particular case. Once I click next, I click on create. Now you see the table called test table pinpoint. Now test table pinpoint, I can decide to preview this table and I get only the information I want to visualize. Now I'll be using this table for further visualization or an aspect of this video, which is to visualize this particular data. So I've queried my data and I created a table from a subset of data I want to visualize. So the next steps here is to leverage a business intelligence tool to visualize this particular data. In our case, we'll be using Amazon QuickSight. So we go to QuickSight. Now in QuickSight, it's very important you ensure that the region you used Athena is the same region as you want to visualize data in, which is in my case it was US West 2, and in this particular case, now the question now is how do we connect Amazon Athena, the tables in Athena, to Amazon for visualization in Amazon QuickSight. So with the next step is we create a new data set. We click on Athena. We give a data source a name. Data source Athena pinpoint. And then our Athena working group is primary, which you can select. You can validate the connection. SSL enabled. We click on create data source. Now we select our database. Our database is SampleDB. We select the table, which is the Pinpoint Kinesis video recording bucket. Or in our case, we can use the test table pinpoints, which is what we're supposed to use in this case for this video, because we just queried a subset, we generated a table, and we want to use that to visualize data. Now we click on select. Now we directly query your data. We don't want to use Spice. Depending on what you want, you can always use that. And we decide to visualize this data. Now you get a graph like this. Now it's very important you confirm if this data is what is it's actually been you are able to visualize this data in Amazon QuickSight. So just by clicking on any of this button, so I'm able to visualize this data. Now for some of you, you might get certain errors. Now when you get those errors, it's very important you go to this part, the top right hand side. You go to manage QuickSight. Yes, manage QuickSight. And then we click on security and permissions. Now, when you get that error, you need to switch to US East, which is the North Virginia region. Now you switch to US East 1. Now you can decide to add your S3 bucket. It's very important you add your S3 bucket in order to give QuickSight access to this particular service. So we go to this point, and then you go to the S3 bucket. This shows that I selected 2 buckets in this particular case. So in your case, you might be getting a particular error that says it's not able to write to this particular bucket. Now that particular bucket, QuickSight is not able to write to. You need to enable it in this particular case, and you select the particular S3 bucket. Once you're done selecting it, you update and you're done. Now remember to also switch back to the region you're using to visualize data. If you're using US East 1, it's fine. No need to switch back. Makes things easy. Yeah. And then you click on the fields. You should be able to access this particular information after clicking on it. Now, in my case, just want to show you a quick demo of the power of Amazon QuickSight. And you just need to click on the vertical bar chart. In my case, I'll be using, maybe I want to compare session ID and then I also want to compare address information. Here, I can always just drag. So I can always have the session counts as compared to the address information. So the number of times this particular the session counts for this particular address for a particular time range. You can always do that on QuickSight. So QuickSight gives you that gives you the ability to visualize this data and take certain actions for reporting purposes. So, and this is how I come to the end of leveraging Amazon Pinpoint Analytics to improve application performance, user interaction, and experience. Now, in the next demo, I'll be preparing more advanced content tailored to specific sections of Pinpoint Analytics, more related to visualizing KPIs data from custom dashboards. Goodbye for now.